Hello and welcome to another episode of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. As always, I try to bring impactful pieces of information. Today, I want to share top 10 nuggets of wisdom in real estate for evicting a bad tenant. I'm sure if any of you have ever been landlords or tenants, this is an area where some conflict may have arisen here and there. And I've previously talked about this issue, but today I want to really focus on how to deal with the process of eviction. I've been traveling. I went to Zambia, I went to Zimbabwe and South Africa and so on. And every time I talk to a real estate investor, the issue of dealing with difficult tenants always comes up. So here are the top 10 nuggets that you need to come to terms with in dealing with these difficult tenants who we call recalcitrants. Number one, know the laws. Familiarize yourself with the country's eviction laws to ensure that you follow the correct legal procedures. As an attorney who's been practicing for 36 years and counting, and as someone who has been in the real estate industry now for more than 2 decades, it's very important that as these two industries intersect on this issue, one treads carefully. Number two, document everything. Keep thorough records of all interactions, all violations, all notices, and all communications between yourself as a landlord and the tenant. You need to keep a record of all this, and in this modern day and age, you can keep a digital record as well. But it's important that every phone call be documented, every email, every WhatsApp communication, everything has to be documented leading up to a point where a decision to evict a tenant is reached. Number three, communicate clearly. You'd be surprised how often landlords fail to be crystal clear in their communication. Yes, you have a lease agreement which details the relationship between the landlord and the tenant, but sometimes it's important to maintain open and clear communication with the tenant, explaining and all the reasons that have become necessary for the eviction. In this regard, you communicate clearly which clause or provision of the lease that you are relying upon. You provide them with the necessary notices. Often you are required to give, in some leases, it's 14 days notice. In other leases, it's 7 days notice. And where there's no lease, and I really don't advise you to ever tread into this territory without a lease, but you're supposed to give reasonable notice where there's no leases. So it's very, very important that you comply to the letter with the terms and conditions of the lease agreement and give the notices that are required. Number four, you need to use professional notices. What do I mean by this? You don't want to sort of take a chance. You don't want. This is not one of the things where you can sort of fake it, as it were, and then just take a chance. No, you need to serve an official eviction notice in accordance with the local laws and the regulations. Sometimes there's no harm in actually seeing an attorney first and getting advice and paying for that advice in order to know what the procedures are, because you don't want to mess it up for an attorney. Eventually, the lease process may be done by an attorney, but at the initial stages, in terms of documentation, sending those initial notices, all that could be done by you as a landlord. So it might help you to get the advice of an attorney before embarking on the actual eviction process. Number five, stay compliant. Stay compliant. It's very, very important that you as a landlord remain on the right side of the law. Ensure that your eviction process complies with housing laws, fair housing laws, and regulations. You want to avoid any potential legal entanglements, because sometimes legal issues can drag. Here in Botswana, we have a thing called we have a process at the High Court known as a case management system, CMS, and that CMS sometimes drags, and you may find that you are trying to evict a tenant on a basis of urgency, and the system, the way it works is that both sides have to be heard, and it tends to drag and drag and drag, and in this way you need to ensure that your paperwork is in order, you're following all the regulations and the laws, and you are able to perhaps go by way of a process known as summary judgment. Your attorney can advise you how to go about doing that. And if you need to go through the process of a landlord's hypothec, your attorney will also advise you how to get hold of those assets of the tenant and have them attached. Number 6, consider mediation. What does that mean? This may be relevant in other jurisdictions more than here. The mediation process may be available. As someone who has studied arbitration and alternative dispute resolution, I sometimes advise that where the tenant has proven to be most recalcitrant, it is better to have a one-on-one meeting with them, and sometimes you have to massage their egos a little bit and see the process of evicting them by way of an agreement. What am I talking about? I've seen some landlords actually paying tenants to leave their properties. In America, it's not unheard of to have a landlord pay $5,000, for instance, to the tenant so that they can avoid lengthy, complicated legal processes. But what I'm saying is that you can subject the process to alternative dispute resolution or the mediation process. Number 7, hire legal help. It may become necessary for you to consult with a real estate attorney or seek legal advice. We have you covered at Lerumo Mogobe Legal Practitioners, because this is something we do on a daily basis. We have a group of lawyers who are standing on the ready and are available. And I think this is just an opportunity to do a little bit of a shameless plug for Lerumo Mogobe Legal Practitioners and inform you that we can be accessed at +267 397 4002. A lawyer will help you, take you through the process and guide you through through protecting your interests through a somewhat confusing and convoluted court process sometimes. Number 8, stay patient. This is a difficult part. Even for me, it is something that I'm preaching to myself as much as I'm preaching to yourself on this point. Stay patient. Understand that the eviction process can be time consuming, and remain patient throughout, prioritizing accuracy over speed. You don't want to rush things through. You don't want fafara. You want to make sure that every T is crossed, every I is dotted insofar as the process is concerned. So you have to remind yourself to remain patient. I know it's difficult when you are facing a mortgage, when you are facing other pressures, when this tenant is not paying. It's very difficult to remain patient, but it's a piece of advice that I would give. Remain patient, within bounds, of course. You have to make sure that you're aggressive and also assertive in pushing things forward, but be patient nonetheless to make sure you don't make any unforced errors and score your own goals against yourself, so to speak. Number 9, mitigate future issues. What does that mean? This means that you have to be aware to avoid future problems. Learn from the experience that you've had and implement stronger tenant screening processes to avoid similar situations in the future. We at Mogobe Incorporated have a detailed vetting process or screening process, in terms of which we require the potential tenant to give us all their details, to produce their bank statements to show that their liquidity situation, and to show that they are credit worthy insofar as the way they conduct themselves in business. They are also required to show that they don't have any ITC or listing. By that I mean they don't have listing at a credit bureau and they are clean. Only then can we bring them in. Number 10, maintain professionalism at all times. What do I mean by that? I mean you approach the situation with professionalism and with the necessary professional etiquette, and you avoid personal conflicts with the tenant, focusing on the legal process. You avoid personalizing the process. I know that the tenant will get emotional. He may even be abusive. He may even use explosive terminology. By that I mean he may swear at you. And you need to remind yourself that this is a professional setting. So you should remind yourself that every situation may have unique circumstances. So it's crucial to seek legal advice in specific situations. But insofar as your interactions with the recalcitrant tenant or the recalcitrant debtor who has to be evicted, you need to be professional. You want to make sure that you do not derail the process by now having the process being against your conduct and your behavior. So those are the top 10 nuggets of wisdom on how to ensure that you evict a tenant in a professional manner. So those are the top 10 nuggets of wisdom. Thank you so much for watching. And let me conclude by saying, please remember to strike that notification bell, as well strike that those other buttons, including the like button, as well as the what is the other button?
Subscribe.
Yes, of course you need to subscribe. Thank you very much for that reminder. Bye bye.